Your brain is shrinking right now, and you don't even know it. If you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, a parent, a partner, a boss, something happened to you that goes far beyond emotional pain. Your neural pathways were literally rewired. Your stress hormones went haywire. Parts of your brain that regulate emotion, memory, and self-worth began to atrophy. This is not metaphor, this is neuroscience. And the most terrifying part, you might still be living with the damage without realizing it. Today, we're going to explore exactly what narcissistic abuse does to your brain, the hippocampus, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and why survivors often feel like they've lost themselves. Your brain was hijacked, but here's what they don't tell you. The brain is plastic. It can heal. And understanding the science is the first step to reclaiming your mind. The invisible wound. When someone breaks your arm, you get a cast. People sign it. They bring you soup. They understand. But when someone systematically dismantles your sense of reality over months or years, there's no visible injury, no cast, no soup. Just a creeping sense that something is deeply wrong with you. This is why narcissistic abuse is so insidious. It leaves wounds that don't show up on any X-ray. The worst wounds are the ones we cannot see. Victims often spend years questioning whether the abuse even happened. They minimize it. They blame themselves. Why? Because the damage is neurological, not physical. Research from Stanford University shows that chronic psychological abuse creates measurable changes in brain structure, changes that mirror those found in combat veterans with PTSD. Your suffering was real, and your brain has the scars to prove it. You weren't being dramatic. You weren't too sensitive. Your brain was under attack, and it responded the only way it knew how, by rewiring itself for survival. But what exactly changed? Let's start with the part of your brain responsible for fear. Hijacked amygdala. Deep in your brain sits a small, almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. It's your brain's alarm system, the part that detects danger and triggers your fight-or-flight response. In a healthy brain, the amygdala activates when there's a genuine threat, then calms down when the danger passes. But in survivors of narcissistic abuse, something goes terribly wrong. Fear becomes your default. Studies using fMRI imaging have shown that people who experienced chronic emotional abuse have an enlarged, hyperactive amygdala. It's like having a smoke detector that goes off every time someone makes toast. You startle easily. Your heart races at the sound of a certain ringtone. A raised eyebrow from a stranger sends you into a spiral. This isn't weakness, it's neurological damage. The body keeps the score. Your amygdala learned that the world is dangerous, that people are unpredictable, that love means walking on eggshells. And it won't forget that lesson easily. Even years after leaving the abusive relationship, survivors report feeling on edge constantly. Your nervous system is still waiting for the next attack, but your amygdala isn't the only casualty. The abuse also targeted something even more precious, your memory. Memory erosion. Have you ever tried to explain what happened in an abusive relationship, only to find your memories are fragmented, blurry, like trying to read a book with half the pages ripped out? This isn't a coincidence. Your hippocampus, the brain's memory center, literally shrinks under chronic stress. Your memories were systematically erased. Research published in the journal Biological Psychiatry found that people who experienced prolonged emotional trauma showed up to 12% reduction in hippocampal volume. 12% of your memory center gone. This explains so much of what survivors experience. You can't remember specific incidents clearly. Timelines blur together. You know something terrible happened, but the details slip away like sand through your fingers. Gaslighting plus stress equals memory loss. And here's where it gets even darker. Narcissists often exploit this. They gaslight you about events you can barely remember anyway. They tell you it didn't happen that way. And because your hippocampus is damaged, you can't trust your own recollections. They didn't just lie to you, they made you doubt your own mind. The abuse didn't just hurt you, it made you unable to prove, even to yourself, that it happened. But the neurological assault doesn't stop there. Cortisol flood. Imagine living in a house that's on fire every single day. That's what your endocrine system experiences during narcissistic abuse. Your body floods with cortisol, the primary stress hormone, and it never gets the signal to stop. Under normal circumstances, cortisol helps you respond to short-term threats. Your ancestors saw a tiger, cortisol spiked, they ran, cortisol dropped. But narcissistic abuse isn't a tiger attack, it's a siege. The threat is constant, unpredictable, and often disguised as love. So your cortisol stays elevated for months, years, decades. Chronic stress is not a state of mind. It is a physical assault on the body. This sustained cortisol exposure does devastating things to your brain. It kills neurons in the hippocampus. It makes your amygdala grow larger and more reactive. It impairs the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking. You literally become less able to think clearly, to make decisions, to see the situation objectively. Stress hormone becomes brain poison. This is why leaving an abusive relationship is so hard. Your brain has been chemically compromised. You weren't stupid for staying. Your brain was under chemical siege. And this brings us to perhaps the most frightening change of all: thinking impaired. Behind your forehead lies the prefrontal cortex, the most evolved part of your brain. It's responsible for rational thinking, impulse control, planning, and something crucial, recognizing manipulation. Compromised. In healthy individuals, the prefrontal cortex acts as a brake on the emotional amygdala. It says, wait, let's think about this logically before reacting. But chronic stress from narcissistic abuse weakens this connection. The emotional brain takes over. You become reactive instead of responsive. You make decisions from fear instead of wisdom. Studies show that trauma survivors have reduced activity and even gray matter volume in the prefrontal cortex. The very part of your brain that could save you was being destroyed. This explains why victims often make choices that seem irrational to outsiders, why they go back, why they believe obvious lies, why they can't just leave. It's not a character flaw, it's a brain injury. Logic becomes impossible when you're under attack. The narcissist essentially disabled your ability to see them clearly. They didn't just manipulate your emotions. They impaired the neurological machinery you needed to recognize the manipulation. And there's another brain region that suffers silently: lost identity. Who are you? Before the abuse, you probably had an answer. Hobbies, dreams, opinions, a sense of your own worth. After the abuse, many survivors can't answer this question at all. It's not just psychological, it's neurological. The medial prefrontal cortex, specifically involved in self-referential thinking, shows altered activity in abuse survivors. They didn't just hurt me, they erased me. Narcissists systematically dismantle your sense of self. They mock your interests until you abandon them. They criticize your opinions until you stop having them. They isolate you from friends who reflect back who you really are. Piece by piece, they took apart the person you used to be, and your brain adapted. The neural networks associated with your identity, your preferences, your values, your sense of worth weakened from disuse. You literally forgot who you were. Your self was neurologically erased. Survivors often describe feeling like an empty shell after leaving, like they have to rebuild from scratch. That's because, neurologically speaking, they do. The person they were before wasn't just hurt, they were dismantled at the neural level. But here's where the science gets even more disturbing. Trauma bonding. Why do abuse victims often miss their abusers? Why do they defend them, even love them? The answer lies in your brain's reward system, and it's been hijacked. Love became a drug, and you became an addict. Narcissistic abuse operates on an intermittent reinforcement schedule, the same principle that makes gambling so addictive. Random rewards, unpredictable kindness, occasional love bombing amid the cruelty. This pattern floods your brain with dopamine during the good moments, creating a neurological addiction to the abuser. Research shows that trauma bonds activate the same brain regions as substance addiction: the ventral tegmental area and nucleus accumbens. Your brain's reward circuitry become conditioned to crave the abuser's approval. This is why leaving feels physically painful, why you get withdrawal symptoms, why you find yourself obsessively checking their social media months after escape. Your brain was chemically bonded to the person destroying you. You weren't weak for missing them. You were experiencing neurological withdrawal from a toxic addiction. The abuser becomes both the poison and the perceived cure. But there's something happening in your brain that makes recovery even more complicated. Emotional numbing. At some point during prolonged abuse, something strange happens. You stop feeling. The pain becomes so overwhelming that your brain does the only thing it can. It shuts down your emotional processing. This is called emotional numbing, and it's a survival mechanism that becomes a prison. Your brain chose survival over feeling. The insula and anterior cingulate cortex, regions involved in processing emotions and physical sensations, show reduced activity in trauma survivors. You become disconnected from your own body. You can describe terrible things that happen to you without feeling anything. You watch your life like a movie happening to someone else. I felt like a ghost living in my own body. This dissociation protected you during the abuse, but after you leave, it remains. You can't feel joy. You can't feel love. You can't even feel relief at being free. The price of surviving was losing your ability to feel alive. Partners complain you're emotionally unavailable. Friends say you seem distant. You know something is wrong, but you can't access the emotions that would tell you what. Your brain built walls to survive, and now you're trapped inside them. But the damage extends even further than your emotions. Physical toll. The brain changes are terrifying enough, but narcissistic abuse doesn't stop at your neurons, it ravages your entire body. Chronic stress from abuse is linked to a devastating array of physical conditions. Autoimmune disorders, cardiovascular disease, chronic pain, fibromyalgia, even cancer. Your body remembers. A landmark study in the journal Psychosomatic Medicine found that people who experienced childhood emotional abuse had elevated inflammatory markers decades later, markers associated with heart disease, diabetes, and premature death. Your immune system, endocrine system, and cardiovascular system all bear the scars. Emotional abuse becomes physical disease. Survivors report mysterious symptoms that doctors can't explain: chronic fatigue, digestive problems, headaches that won't go away. The body is screaming what the mind learned to suppress. The abuse didn't just break your heart, it poisoned your entire system. Research from the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experiences, shows that emotional abuse has health impacts as severe as physical abuse. The body bears the burden of what the mind cannot process. You weren't imagining your health problems. They were the physical manifestation of neurological damage. But here's what they don't tell you about all of this. Healing is real. After everything we've discussed, you might feel hopeless. Your brain was damaged. Your body was poisoned. Your sense of self was erased. But here's the most important truth. The brain can heal. Neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to form new neural connections throughout life, means that the damage from narcissistic abuse is not permanent. Studies show that trauma-informed therapy can actually increase hippocampal volume. Meditation and mindfulness can calm the hyperactive amygdala. Safe relationships can help rebuild the neural networks of identity and trust. The brain that learned fear can learn safety again. Your cortisol levels can normalize. Your prefrontal cortex can regain control. Your emotional processing can come back online. It takes time. It takes work. It often takes professional help, but it is possible. The same brain that was rewired for survival can be rewired for healing. You are not permanently broken. You are not defined by what was done to you. Your brain can heal. The neuroscience that reveals the damage also reveals the path to recovery. Understanding what happened to your brain is the first step to reclaiming it. Your brain was changed by narcissistic abuse. That is a fact. Your amygdala became hypervigilant. Your hippocampus shrank. Your prefrontal cortex was impaired. Your stress hormones flooded your system for years. Your sense of self was neurologically dismantled. What was done to you was not your fault. Healing is your responsibility. But here's what makes humans remarkable. We are not static creatures. The same neural plasticity that allowed the damage also allows the repair. Every day you spend in safety, your brain is quietly rebuilding. Every therapy session, every moment of self-compassion, every healthy relationship, they are all laying down new neural pathways. Awareness is the first step. The fact that you watched this video, that you sought to understand what happened to you, that is already part of your healing. You are not crazy. You are not broken. You are a survivor of neurological warfare, and your brain is fighting to recover. You survived something that tried to destroy you from the inside out. Now you know exactly what was done to your brain. And now you can begin the work of taking it back. Welcome to the Psyche Project. If this helped you understand what you've been through, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more.